child custody and black magic, coming up right after this. Good afternoon, this is Lucky Links. I'm going to do two things here in this video, and I'm going to hope to show you guys how you use an oracle to investigate a situation, a larger situation, to get some answers and to hopefully find some truth. Second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a subject that has become the center of something I see in my work constantly. People out there might go, hey, are you talking about me? Maybe, because there's so many people this is happening to that this has become a regular topic in readings and consultations. And that is the subject of child custody. What happens is two parents get together. One parent turns out to be abusive, or maybe both are abusive, or something's not right. They split. One parent wants to get the child away from the abusive parents, and the courts force both to stay together. So the courts actually force one of the parents, either the mother or the father, to put the children in line of danger with the abusive parent, or the parent who, let's just say the abusive parent, okay? So then what happens is the one parent wants to leave the state or get out, but the courts say, no, you have to stay and you have to have joint custody, and it becomes this big, huge thing. And I see it all the time, and people are always asking for, and then what happens is that one or both of the parents becomes desperate, and they want to get out, and there's no way to get out. And these days, people are more and more trying to turn towards magic to help break what's keeping them in the place, right? So there's a couple of things going on here. One, I've noticed that in a lot of cases, one of the parents notices something about the other parent that isn't right, but they still go ahead and have children with them. The first thing I'm going to say is pay attention to your intuition when something doesn't feel right, or you're not noticing something that's working in your relationship, or that they treat you a way that's not great. Chances are when they have the kids, they're not going to treat the kids great either. Second, if you find out something really dark in the person's behavior in abuse, my recommendation is this is not a person that you want to have children with unless you want that child to be in that line of that abuse. I understand in some cases it comes out after the fact, or you didn't know, or whatever the reason. If you have that feeling that something's not right, trust it. In a lot of cases, people go, hey, I knew there was something wrong, and I didn't trust it, and then the child ends up in that situation. Years and years and years and years and years ago, I had a client who came to me crying because he was with a woman who was extremely abusive to him, and she was very abusive to him. And I said, look, be very careful. If you're going to be intimate with this woman, be very careful, because a child may come out of it. It is very likely that a child will come out of it. And he said, no, we're never together, we're never intimate, it's not going to happen. I said, it's only going to take one time. It was in the cards, it was coming there in the cards. And he could have avoided the whole situation, but instead what happened was, it did happen that way. They had a child, and there was a huge custody battle, a whole lot of abuse, a whole lot of dealing with the courts, and it was a nightmare. And it was something that he could have avoided had he chosen to remove himself from the abusive situation and go down a road where he found a woman who treated him less abusively. Now, I laid out the cards here because I wanted to address this in terms of the topic of a magical war going on. And so I asked the cards, they just sort of kind of opened up to me and started talking to me right away. So we got family here, we got a competition, right? So it'd be a family competition. So that would be a competition between members of the family. So they're competing over or fighting over. If this goes too far, it could be a fight over a debt that creates a curse. Okay, so when I ask specifically what's going on in relation to this particular topic and why I'm seeing so many people go through this, this is the one I'm looking for, because this one usually tells me there's black magic involved and a curse. This is a debt. This can be a financial burden or someone else's burdens. So this can also mean a joint partnership of family members. And then if I'm asking, so I know that I'm talking specifically about a child or children and custody battles here, right? So this is the one I'm curious about because I want to know specifically where the curse is involved. So my question for you guys is, when you're going to look at a situation like this, ask yourself, okay, when you see a trend that's so big, I'm going to start to suggest from this point forward, after doing all these videos on this subject, that you start to ask, where's the magic at? So what I suggest you guys do then is you start to ask, where's the magic? Where is that curse coming from? So if the courts are forcing two people to be together and to stay together in a state, so in a lot of cases what I keep seeing is one parent wants to move away from the abusive parent, and one wants to move away, but the state is forcing them to stay together. So then a lot of things are happening. One, both parents are using one or more, and I've seen this happen a lot of ways. One or more of the parents is using the child as a pawn to get to the other person and make them pay for their debts, their anger, their whatever. So let's say one person isn't right in the head, or they're angry, or they're bitter, or they want to get even with the other person. Well, they're using the child to force the other person to stay indebted to them. In other words, literally being forced to be in joint custody, okay? But then this shows a curse or black magic behind it. So what I'm going to ask you guys to ask yourself is, what would benefit magically from forcing two people to stay in a state together and forcing a child to stay in an environment where the parents don't want to be together, they're fighting with each other, and one person or more are abusive? What would be the purpose of that? Now, I'm not even bringing into the taking the child out and putting him in custody, because that's another thing I see happening, but this is specifically parents who they find proof of or see, or there's a history of abuse or something where the child is put in danger and the courts are forcing them to stay together. Okay? I'm not saying anything else about that. I'm saying, who would benefit from it? Who would benefit from that happening, and where do you think the magic would be coming from? Okay? So now, the other thing I'm going to ask here to show you guys is, what more can I say on this subject for the sake of this video? Because now that I've brought this subject up about magic and a magical war in the world, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start bringing up topics that I see happening all the time with people. And okay, so this is something that people are going to get uncomfortable with, and I'm going to say it anyway. There's a lot of people out there that simply want to have sex without worrying about the responsibility of what comes later. There are people who want to have sex in order to trap other people financially. There are people who simply want to do it because it makes them feel powerful. And what they fail to recognize is they're bringing a third life into being when they do so. So there's another angle to go at this from then too. What would benefit, and here's another one, this is an enemy and or a fight and or a need for a fight. Also might suggest some dark magic. So when an individual is in a state where something is possibly feeding on them and they need to have an enemy, how might they use sex, security, pleasure, and the need to have a child with someone in order to satisfy their need to have an enemy? What magic could be behind this kind of stuff? Who would benefit from it? Do you think something might be feeding on it? Do you think this is illustrative? Because this is something that if you start to look around, you will see constant examples of, and I bet many of you right now can go, oh my God, I've seen that. I've seen that happen in your clients or your friends or family members or whatever. The need for sex, sex for security, or to grab hold of someone else's security. Men or women do this. Men and men, women and women, men and women, women and men. The need to feel power over another person by bringing another life into it, or having control over another person by bringing a life into it, and the need to have an enemy. How might all of these things result in this? Family, joint custody, debt, a curse. Now I've explored this. I've looked at this closely. I'm putting the questions out there for you guys to start to consider in your everyday experiences. Here's some advice I'm going to give you guys. If you don't want to find yourself in this situation, be very careful about it. Be very careful about who you choose to bring a life into the world with. That's the first piece. Second, if something doesn't feel right in a relationship or a situation, trust it. Get out. Remember, birth control is not 100%. Remember this too. There are forces who will get in the picture after the fact to force you to stay where you are if you're not careful. The big question is, and the insight comes from, who's the big curse coming from? If there is magic running behind all of this that's making this happen, where do you think the magic is coming from, and who do you think would benefit from that kind of magic? There's another thing I'm going to bring up now that's very uncomfortable. All through the history of humanity, children have been put into unfortunate, horrible situations of abuse, where they are child labor, where they are put in situations where they're too young to handle what's going on, and people take advantage of them. In a lot of these cases, what happens is the kids become the pawn of the parents and the courts. And the kids don't even necessarily know what's going on fully, and they don't even necessarily have a say in it. So my question is, if there is a magical war going on in the world, and if magic is coming in and happening like this, where do you think the magic would be coming from? Who do you think would benefit from it? And how could you ask those questions more deeply to understand this subject for yourself even more? And then the bigger question is, how do you undo the magic? I'm Lucky Links. As always, wishing you success and good fortune in all that you do. I'm hoping to bring these questions, these topics to light so that people might start to ask themselves, is the world just going crazy? Are we just all going down a rabbit hole? Or is there something magically actually pushing people to make these kinds of decisions, having these experiences, and binding them to situations that they find themselves unable to extricate themselves from? If you would like to get a reading from me, 779-302-8009 or conjurehope@gmail.com. If you would like me to do Kilcore work for you, that's Tibetan Kilcore work is where I build a map for you. I see what's going on in the map of your life, and then I use Tibetan processes to actually start to shift your life in a new direction. So it actually can be used to change your life, in most cases, very, very quickly. And if you'd like to get that done, contact me and I'll tell you how I do that and what we do for that. And if you'd like to take a class, I've got one in how to read the playing cards. I've got one in tarot. I've got a basic tarot class. I've got an intermediate to advanced tarot class. I've got one in how to read crystal ball. I've got one in how to read Mexican loteria. And I've got two in Lenormand, one basic and one grand tableau. So it's an uncomfortable question. It's an inflammatory question. But I think it's an important question. What do you think is behind these situations where people get stuck, indebted, and bound to another person through a child that may or may not even want to be part of the equation?